Hey everyone, this video right here is going to be a reference. I might have to do this in 2 or 3 parts. I'm not sure at this particular stage of the game, but it's a very important topic that I want to cover. I've been wanting to cover it. I've touched down slightly in past videos, but I want to get more deep into the subject, into the topic. And yeah, that picture on the screen, the federal government, the Parliament building, yeah, that's all part and parcel of what this series is going to be about. Headline from the Fraser Forum: Why Canada has an income tax, the conscription of wealth. So let's read on and see what all we're going to be referring to and what we're going to be discussing here. In such experiences, in quotations, in such experiences I have had with taxation, and it has been considerable, there is only one tax that I know of that is popular, and that is the tax that is on the other fellow. Sir Thomas White, House of Commons debate on the income tax, August 3rd, 1917. So obviously not a fan. Conventional wisdom has it that Canada's income tax was introduced as a temporary measure. That's not quite true. It did begin during a temporary emergency, the Great War, and it was officially named the war tax upon incomes. But when, at 3 p.m. on July 25th, 1917, Sir Thomas White, Toronto journalist, tax assessor, and financier turned wartime finance minister, rose in the Commons to describe the new federal income tax he was proposing. He never used the word temporary. So think about what they're saying right here now. Toronto journalist, tax assessor, and financier turned wartime finance minister. So the video I did, whether I've uploaded it prior to this or after this, I guess will be the big determinant factor if you understand the correlation of what I was talking about. But now when it was an opinion piece out of CBC, how journalists are now jumping back in, right? The government to back and forth, right? They're in government, and then they pretend to be journalists, and then they're in government. So once again, even back in 1917, that was still a practice that apparently was quite common. Of the tax's duration, the minister said only that I have placed no time limit upon this taxation measure, but I do suggest that after the war is over, it should be deliberately reviewed with the view of judging whether it is suitable to the conditions which then prevail. This was in pointed contrast to the approach he had taken with the 1916 business profit war tax, right? This was 1916, which initially he had limited to taxing war profits earned from 1914 through 1917. So before I go on any further, we're seeing that both of these taxes, corporate tax basically, and personal income tax, they only came to fruition as a result, and they were implemented as under the pretense of being a temporary measure for wartime. And even the corporate tax, what would they been doing? Taxing the companies that were profiting from war, right? Think about what that means, and personal income tax. So if you think about 1917, go look at some pictures of Canada prior to that, and you'll find out, yes, there were roads, yes, there were teachers. Do some research. There were schools. I mean, yeah, all the people that say, oh, we need government for it. All of those things existed before any such thing as income tax ever come to fruition. Now, in U.S., I believe it was 1913. In Canada, it was 1917. But it was all under the guise of for a global or a world war, right? So people were automatically, I mean, they would have known. That's because you think the Canadian people or the American people is, I'm going to allow the government to steal from me for any reason other than a war, to defend their country, to defend their nation, to defend their, what they would perceive as their property, or their rights, of their sustainable living conditions. Of course, Canadians, no one would have put up with it. This is what governments do. They use fear or the pretense of some imposing threat or danger as a means to an end so that they can circumvent your rights and take from you, and you'll put your head down and kind of go along to get along. Most people, or enough people, that the ones that won't, they don't matter, right? horizontal enforcement or throwing the few that don't in jail or using them, set an example with them, harsh punishments, incarceration, right? That's how this shit all comes to fruition. But even in this, they're admitting. So prior, like I said, prior to 1916, 17, in Canada, you could have all the things that all the people clamor and say, oh, I need government for, but there was no such thing as an income tax. To me, there's no such thing as a legitimate tax. But if there's any kind of tax that where you want to pay for services or anything, right? Collective services, well, that should be on the people that use those services. Income tax forces everyone under the same pool, right? So they can steal from everybody. There's the problem. But anyways, in the debate on the proposed new income tax, at least one MP confidently predicted and celebrated that it was here to stay. And celebrated. Of course, oh, look, we can steal forever, for infinity, right? From the lowly serfs in Canada. The opposition Liberals finance critic welcomed the tax, saying, I have no doubt that the principle contained in the taxation proposal just submitted will be approved of by the country. Now, I'm not even going to, in this particular video, I'm going to try to keep these rather short. I'm going to deal with this whole thing in segments. But think about what I've even read so far and take into context what this really means. The whole thing, I mean, back then it was only a few percent. Income tax was only a few percent, but look at what we're at now. Whereas the government said, I mean, we've seen the reports, right? So all the taxes that are now imposed upon us now represent not just the majority of our income, right? But more than housing, food, and fuel combined. So all the things humans need to live and exist and flourish in any particular geographical landmass, the government takes more from you under the guise of taxation, which is just forced. It's just theft or extortion. Some people call it extortion. Theft, extortion, you can use either one. It works out the same way, right? Still taken without someone's permission. But if you think about it, a few percent back then, and even then they were apprehensive to even implement it, and it only happened under the guise of a world war. Look at how far we've fallen today. We're now, like I said, the governments take from you a larger percentage of your income. They steal from you for a lot of services that most of us don't even use on a regular basis, right? On a regular basis. Think about it. How many times do you actually use government service where you're not paying another additional fee or whatever, right? How many do you think now that they've amassed and accumulated the amount of wealth they steal from you to the point where, like I said, and it's been reported, go look it up there. It's all easily available, just a Google search away, that yes, you pay more in taxes on average as a Canadian than what you pay for the roof over your head, the clothes on your back, and the food that you eat. That should tell you something, Canada. Let this be your first, if you're new to my channel, new to my page, or new to the kind of videos I produce, let this be the part where you're just dipping your toes in the water so you'll start to understand, start down that rabbit hole where you'll finally come along to understanding what people like myself have been talking about for a long time now. This stuff is not done under any banner of legitimacy or compassion or morality, or it's forced wealth redistribution, it's theft, it's oppression, it's servitude and slavery by another name and different means. That's all. It's Canadian Libertarian, and I love liberty.